Today we're going to look at getting the bike set up correctly for the style of riding you do.
So here is our top 10 setup mistakes.
So the first one is brake levers. You'll never see a really good rider using any more than one finger braking. It's definitely on a modern bike with modern brakes at least. So get your brake lever set up first before any of the other controls on the bars, because they're the most important. Get them set up so your one finger comes right on the very end of that lever, so you've got maximum leverage. I couldn't fit two fingers if I wanted to. And also brake lever angles quite important. If you have them really low on the bar, sometimes you can get a little bit too much weight on the bars. So I like to run them relatively high. I also like to run mine really close with the reach, but that's more of a personal preference thing. But get them set inboard on the bars first, so you've got one finger right on the end, and then do the rest of your controls around the brake levers.
My advice would be stick to flats when you're starting out. It's more confidence inspiring when you're riding along, and obviously it's far easier to get your foot down versus riding in clips. One of the other main points is you can learn great technique on flat pedals before taking on clips if you choose to go down that path. One thing about going onto clips too early is you can develop poor technique, therefore that might hold you back further along in your cycling.
Many people stick with the tyres that came on their bike, but it's really trying to get that right tyre that works for the style of riding you like to do and where you ride. It's trying to pick between grip, rolling resistance and puncture resistance and work out what you need from there. Bear in mind your weight and how aggressively you ride. So there's no point having a really big, heavy, grippy, puncture-proof tyre if all you do is miles and miles of riding. Works vice versa, so just make sure you get the right tyre for the style of riding you do.
So after you've set the sag on your rear shock, you really want to focus on getting your rebound dialed in correctly. We see no end of people riding with very little or no rebound damping at all. This might mean that it feels okay when you're sat on the saddle pedaling over small bumps, but once you get out of the saddle, start picking up speed over rougher terrain or even hitting jumps, you'll find that the bike kicks, feels unstable and might tend to throw you over the handlebars. So on the flip side of not enough rebound damping, there's obviously too much rebound damping. The problems with this are it'll feel really harsh when you're riding it, and possibly the worst point is that the shock cannot react fast enough to the consecutive bumps. Also, you can hit your tyre, get punctures and damage your rims because of that sensation. So it's really important that you get this right.
That's a really important one to match the type of riding you do. The rule of thumb really is the more aggressive, more technical, more downhill style of riding you like to do, the shorter you should go with the stem. Mine's 50mm. It's about standard for a downhill sort of trail bike. Obviously that brings your weight further back, so it's much safer and nicer to ride downhill like that. A long stem is better for climbing. That's to keep some weight on the front tyre so that you don't start wheeling. But it's definitely a case that I see people trying to ride downhill stuff, technical riding, with an 80 or 100mm stem isn't making it easy. Bear in mind that some bikes nowadays have a longer top tube, so they're designed to use shorter stems, but it's trying to find that balance so you're not too cramped, but your bars are in that nice position for going downhill, or vice versa, further forward for getting uphill easier.
So this can really alter the characteristics of your bike regardless what discipline you ride. Too soft and you'll tend to have pinch flats, damage your rims or burp your tyres if you're running tubeless.
Whilst too hard, you're just not going to get the same amount of grip. So you'll ping off rocks and they'll roll really well, but grip is not there. I also say if you have to run really high pressures in your tyres, then I would think about actually putting a heavier weight tyre on there so you can then go back down the pressures.
One final point that's worth thinking about is that you can run a slightly softer front tyre to the rear one, as the rear one tends to take the brunt of the punishment.
After selecting the right stem length for you, the bar height is also really important. So bar height comes down to a couple of things: the amount of rise you've actually got in that handlebar, but also these spaces you can put on your steerer tube. I see an awful lot of people with really high handlebars, so either a lot of rise on the bars or lots of spaces underneath their stem. That'll feel nice going downhill, but that can actually start taking weight off the front wheel. So you might find that front wheel washes out when you're cornering because there's just not enough weight on that front wheel. So again, this is a balancing act. It depends on the style of riding you do, the discipline of riding you do. So with cross country, you might want those bars lower to keep more weight on that front tyre for going uphill. Really, you only find out that correct bar height the hard way by going too fast around the corner. Does your bike drift nicely? If so, you've probably got a really nice balanced weight front to back. Like I say, if you're washing out, maybe you've got not enough weight on that front tyre. As you can see, I'm running one spacer on top of my stem. That's my UK setup. If I go somewhere with longer downhills like the Alps or something like that, I'll put that spacer underneath that stem to raise the bars a little bit, give me a more relaxed position further back on the bike.
So the next common setup mistake is the wrong seat height. Too low, and you can see I'm quite cramped on the bike and I cannot get full range of movement when the cranks are in the bottom position. The opposite of that is obviously too high. I'm stretched right out, I can barely reach the pedal, never mind clip in. So moving on from that, there's obviously adjustment on your seat by tipping the nose down. In the case of a cross-country rider, they tend to sit slightly more forward, the nose slightly tipped so they can get over the front and hold the front wheel on the ground so they can drive up the climb. For sort of downhill or more gravity enduro riding, I used to raise the nose up slightly so I could grip the saddle with my legs, and then if I did need to sit down and sort of rest a little bit, I'd find that the seat would hold me there and I wouldn't slip forward and off the bike. My advice would be start a nice flat in the middle position and then work down or up from there.
Another common mistake is riding a bike with an existing problem. So give your bike regular checks over so that you know if something is wearing out or if it needs work immediately. Wheels don't really tend to fold very often unless there's already a loose spoke or two in there, and then you give it a hit. Worn out tyres aren't going to give you much puncture resistance, so give your bike regular checks over and make sure you know if something needs work. Oh, I was really struggling to keep up down there today.
Did it feel bumpy?
It does feel bumpy.
You got your lockout on, pal, you want it off.
That's another really common mistake. It's definitely one that I make, is forgetting to turn my lock off at the top of a downhill. So remember, on for climbing, off for going down. That's going to help you out.
At least you won't have sore hands anymore.
So there's our top 10 most common bike setup mistakes. We've also done a video on our top 10 most common riding mistakes, so click up there for that one.
Yeah, and let us know what mistakes you make. And click down here for our maintenance playlist. And as always, click on Neil's nose to subscribe to GMBN.
Let us know if you make all of the 10 bike setup mistakes and all 10 of the skills mistakes. We'll give you a special prize or something for being so bad.
And don't forget to like this video. Thumbs up in it, Neil.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Where have all these flies come from all of a sudden? Rebound damping. Rebound damping? Suspension rebound, sorry. I get confused.
Hey? There you go. 10 bike setup